Welcome to the Au Jus. I'm your host, Beef Loaf. This show is being sponsored by our friends, Punky's Pizza and Pasta, located at 2600 South Wallace, right here in Bridgeport. My personal favorite eatery in the neighborhood. They have the best selection of pizzas and pastas, as well as sandwiches and salads of any eatery in Bridgeport. Don't believe me? You can try my Sock Summer's favorite, the pot roast sandwich, which is the best in class. Chorizy-E's favorite, the Old Neighborhood Pizza, a Sunday fave of the 108ers. My personal current favorite is the chicken parm sandwich. But rizz it up. Get some garlic bread on there. An undefeated upgrade. Bonita Stakey proclaims that Punky's has the best burgers in the neighborhood, and she's tried them all. Hit the website, punkyspizza.com, for all your carry-out or delivery orders, or to cater your next party. You can also call them at 312-842-2100. The Scarlotta family will take care of you. Punky's Pizza and Pasta. Also, we have tickets on sale for an upcoming live show Wednesday, March 27th, with SoxMachine at the newly renovated Ramova Theatre at 3520 South Halsted Street in Chicago, right here in Bridgeport. We'll actually be in the Ramova Loft portion, which is a 250 capacity venue. Tickets are $22 in advance. You can go to removachicago.com/shows/ to buy tickets. You can also hit the link in the show notes to get those tickets before they're sold out. This show is powered by you, the Loyal 108 supporter. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to tickle the undercarriage in the process. Like, comment, turn on notifications, and most definitely super chat, because that's how we get paid, and that's how we continue to make the content you know and love. Tonight's guest. Needs no introduction. He's the host of the 108 podcast, and from a Southside point of view, he's the star of the Sunday Soak, as well as being one of the sharpest minds in White Sox Twitter. Despite his dashing Silver Fox exterior, he's actually my baby brother, Chorizy-E. Welcome back to the Au Jus, my friend.
Oh, man, my tits look great.
Can I just tell you how excited I am to have Punky's Pizza back in as a sponsor? They were way long time ago, and now they're fully back in again, sponsoring this show.
I love it, because I love that place. And that's one place that, like, I mean, so even New Year's Eve, Beef, you came over to the house, and like, I was like, we're getting Punkies, right? Like, we're getting Punkies. So like that was we had some good sandwiches. It was wonderful. Love it.
Yeah, back when I used to have my opening day party, they were always catered it. All the huge sandwich trays and pizzas and everything. So yeah, they're the best. I mean, there's a very few things on the menu that I won't move around to. Right now, I'm just so stuck on the chicken parm, and I get it on the garlic bread. That's so fucking good, man. You've seen the meme, right? The bread versus garlic bread meme with the two ladies. yeah, man. The garlic bread's a real enhancer for me. But yeah, great to have them on board. Just go to punkyspizza.com and get a takeout order. I see my guy Ken W.O. saying that Julian salad. I know he goes there for lunch sometimes from work.
You didn't mention it in the intro, but like they got the panzerotti. That thing is gigantic. It's basically like a pizza folded in half. So like, if you're like, man, I'm really hungry, get that. You will.
That's multiple meals.
You'll be full.
Absolutely right. So, all right. So I wanted to have you on tonight to talk about the White Sox and the way they're putting together their bullpen. Right now, a lot of White Sox talk that's out there in the Twitter sphere and blog sphere and podcast sphere is like Dylan Cease, trade rumors. New stadium, and then just complaining about Jerry Reinsdorf. And so we've had enough of all those already. I want to dig into some actual real baseball. And as I told you, Chorizy, my internet could go at any point because I've had some problems all night. But I wanted to start.
I'll take it from there.
I was going to say, you just run with this thing if I fall out for 90 seconds or whatever. But what I wanted to start out with was I heard Brian Bannister on a podcast very recently. It was the Baseball Isn't Boring podcast. And he provided a quote, and it got my mind running. And I know it's something that we've been interested in, kind of the thoughts of the newer guys, him and Josh Barfield. And I'm going to put up on the screen for those on YouTube listeners. So Brian Bannister says, and I quote, "One of my big philosophies is just having a lot of diversity of styles on a pitching staff. And so being able to have knuckleballers, submarine pitchers, splitters, guys that can pitch east-west, north-south, approach angle guys that can get guys out with less velo. All those styles can be really valuable. And so it's kind of like collecting all these outliers. There's pitchers all over the place that if you know how to tap into the right strengths and what makes them unique, they can get hitters out." So, Chorizy, what do you think about that comment just to begin with and then also applicable to this bullpen?
There's like 80 layers to this. It's a small snippet of information, but there's a lot of layers to it. And one of the things that I've taken away from this and other things that he's said is like you go to Roster Resource and you see like who they have lined up for like 7th, 8th, and ninth inning. I don't think that exists in his philosophy. Like, I think he's going to be working with Ethan Katz before each game and with Pedro to say, like, here's the matchups. You get this guy, this is the guy that's throwing at him, right? Like, if you're in this high leverage situation, these are the guys that should be pitching against this team. I think there's an element of that. I also think that this is important to think of as a White Sox fan, looking at how they've constructed this roster, is that this is probably the biggest change that you're going to see in 2024, right? This is Chris Getz and this is Brian Bannister taking a different approach at building a bullpen. They're not throwing a lot of money at it. They are saying we can get just as good of a result with like $50 million less going towards this bullpen. So, like, I think that's another piece to look at. And then the third is, I think, the biggest piece and the most important is that he is going to play to the strengths of these guys. Like, he knows what they do well, and he's going to pronounce what they do well, because it's not like these aren't rookies for the most part, right? Like, some of them are younger, but they're not rookies. A lot of these guys are pretty far into their career. You're not trying to develop this guy into a closer, right? Like, you're saying, you're good at this one thing. Just do this one thing. That's all I'm asking of you. I'm making it easy for you. You do the thing you're great at. We'll put you in positions to do that thing. And so I like that philosophy. The problem is it's relievers. So they could fall apart, or they could get hurt or whatever. And will they have enough depth to keep this kind of churning? We'll see.
Yeah, no, I love the way you presented that. And it is damn near opposite style from the last regime. The last regime, I mean, even when they weren't good, Rick Hahn had to go out there and trade Omar Narvaez to get, what's his name? The save. Yeah, Alex Colomé, the save catcher there. It was always like a security blanket of, we need to have bullpen prioritized, bop, bop, bop. These are the types of guys. And then the last group there, it was almost entirely like similar type guys. There wasn't a lot of variability there. Bannister struck me, since we've started hearing more and more of him, is he talks like an advantage player, Chorizy. He talks like a guy who's always looking for an edge. Where can we find an edge? Where can we look in the spots where no one else is looking to find some of these edges? We laughed when they signed Tim Hill, which we'll talk about in a little bit. It's like, this guy sucks. Like, you're signing him on there. Yeah, this is when you're buying stuff that no one else really wants. It's cheap, but also everyone's going to look at you like, well, what the fuck is that? Well, that's the point. That's how they do these things.
Yeah, and we'll get to Tim Hill, because I think that's a very interesting one. That's a wild card. That's a big wild card.
That's a fun one. But let's start off with Gregory Santos, who you had mentioned already. Why don't you just discuss, his repertoire and what we know about Gregory Santos. So, Chorizy, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think the big thing to think about here is just how hard Gregory Santos can throw. Because when we start talking about these other guys, you're going to see that, like, velocity has not been the priority. So Santos is by far the hardest throwing guy in the bullpen. It gets even more so if you remove Garrett Crochet from that bullpen, right? Like, so he is the hardest thrower, but it is not his electric sinker that's going to strike everybody out. It's the movement on his slider, which is nuts. Like, if you look at him on like Baseball Savant or something, you're like, of course no one can hit this ball. Like, of course no one can hit the slider. And the slider's a good, usually like between like 7 and 10 miles per hour difference than the sinker. And so when it comes to something like that, the disparity in those, the movement that he gets on his pitches, it's really a great set of tools that he has for the particular roles that he's had. I think it's going to be interesting to see how he's used, right? Are they going to make him just like your regular old closer, or is he's going to be like a high leverage guy, and like it's the 5th inning and Kopech's having trouble getting out of the 5th, and he comes in to just strike 3 guys out?
Yeah, that's
strike 2 guys out or something.
Yeah, he's your main animal out there.
It'll be interesting to see how they use him because he's one of the few guys that you've got that you can say like you're putting him into the El Duque situation. My bases loaded. I need 3 strikeouts. Basically.
Well, you mentioned that the slider is the thing that moves the needle here. I put up a graph on the YouTube feed. You can look at this is based on Stuff Plus, and it's the best sliders for all qualified relievers. And as you can see, Gregory Santos is number 3 with a bullet right there, behind 2 super high-end closers, Ryan Presley and Emmanuel Clase. As far as last year with the slider, he really delivers with that pitch, and it's a pitch that he throws more than half the time, as you can see in the graph. So you're totally right. This is like an off-the-charts pitch, terrific weapon. And the White Sox, even last year, when we didn't have a pitching guru named Brian Bannister here, they utilized the hell out of Santos' slider.
Yeah, I mean, and the concern I think you have with Santos is, does he stay healthy? Like, can he put up a full year throwing 53, 55% sliders, right? Like we'll see. Didn't work out great last year, but towards the end of the year, but there's no one else there, right? There's no one else
right
challenging him other than a couple guys that they brought in, who I don't think are huge challenges to what he does particularly.
Yeah, absolutely right. And you mentioned Chorizy, the hard sinker. That's what makes it so hard for anyone to lift the ball after Santos. It's very difficult for these hitters to lift it at all, which is why his hard hit rate is not exceptional, but it doesn't translate into a lot of runs because they end up pounding the ball into the ground generally with him. With his delivery, he's a weird overhand. He's not a full overhand. He's almost a 3/4 overhand. And it's a weird delivery spot for a guy as tall as he is. I thought he was taller than he is. I guess he's only like 6'2". I thought he was even taller than 6'2". I was like, this guy is.
He seems big.
He seems enormous, right? Like I was looking it up. I was like, man, how is this guy only this tall? Like he looks like he's about 6'8" out there, but he's not. It's kind of bizarre. 6'2", 190. So anyway, there's Gregory Santos. That's the commodity that we all know and most of us love so far. I want to move on to the next guy, and that's John Brebbia, who they just signed. Chorizy, tell me a little bit about this guy.
So that it's interesting. He's also a slider first guy, right? Like he throws a slider. I think even a little bit more than Santos does. But his fastball that's on the other side of that is not as fast. It's in like kind of low to mid 90s. But it's a 4-seam thinker, and listen, 4-seamer fastball guy gets everybody a little bit nervous after watching a lot of Lance Lynn. The difference here is that Brebbia is still getting a lot of really good movement on the 4-seamer, and this is the 4-seamer is a better. It's the opposite here. The 4-seamer is the better put away pitch for him than the slider. Slider's good, but you're going to see him try and get guys out with the 4-seamer. But like I said, the disparity in velocity is noticeable. However, the slider from that mid 90s fastball, the slider's in like the low 80s.
Yeah, that's so right. There's a larger disparity.
Very different velocity coming at the batter. So like he could pitch backwards, set you up with the slider that's going slow, and then that 93, 94, 95 mile per hour fastball feels a lot faster than what it is. And with the movement that he gets on it, could be a really good pitch. He's not perfect. And I think, they list him as a closer on Roster Resource. He's never really done that at length. Like he's a guy who they've sent out and done everything, right? And Bannister knows this about him. He'll open, he'll go middle relief, he'll go in the 12th inning, whatever you need from the guy. He's seemingly willing to do. And if they are truly doing this kind of mix and match, let's find the best spot to use this guy in this game. Like, this is the kind of guy that gets paid $5 million and says, yeah, whenever. Just throw me in there. Like, and I think that might be, the reason that you would outbid other teams for this, because the Sox getting someone in, you got to give them a little bit more money. So, like, you see $5.5 million, which is not much money. Let's just be honest. But at the same time, closers are in demand. and like I guess back of the bullpen guys, I should say, are in demand. Brebbia qualifies as that. So getting him in here, what they did, it's probably a slight overpay just to bring him in. He probably has the connection to Bannister and Katz that is good. But yeah, I think that we're gonna see what comes of this. I mean, like the slider was good last year, but it wasn't great the year before. And it's like, did he make a change, or was this just it's like a small sample size where it looked really good for some reason? But if he's moving in that direction where the slider's going to have as good as movement as the four seamer, you got something. You got something nice there.
Yeah, and I like the way you bring that up, Chorizy, is that the different planes, like like we mentioned Santos with the two seamer, the sinker. So the sinker and the slider are kind of like going down there together, except that slider's peeling off, right? And that's kind of, this guy's going to change your eye level because the four seamers are generally the fastballs that can stay up in the zone, that they don't have that downward movement, and so you're going to have a little bit of difference here. One thing that's been brought up in the comments by Sir Thomas, he said, we'll see how Brebbia translates. I think he's going to give up a ton of bombs this year. I looked into this a little bit, and in many of the years when he's very successful, his infield fly ball rate is high. So meaning he keeps hitters off balance enough that even though he gives up fly balls, I mean, think about Mike Clevenger last year. He's a high fly ball rate guy as well, but he kept hitters off balance enough that they weren't able to just absolutely destroy him like Lance Lynn was. So I agree with you, Sir Thomas, thinking about it from that perspective, but from what I've seen so far, I'm not as concerned as I was before the initial dive. Chorizy, he is a little more, Brebbia is a little more over the top as far as like motion than Santos, where he's a little bit lower. They're around the same height, but slightly different repertoire there. Now, these are slightly different than each other, but they're different as far as different parts. Now let's get to something that is exceptionally different than the first two products that we talked about here, and that is Tim Hill. The White Sox signed Tim Hill. He had been with the Padres. Tell me a little bit about Tim Hill.
So Tim Hill, he's a sidewinder, right? Like this.
There it is. Yeah, there's a picture on the screen on YouTube. I mean, it's so low it looks absurd. Because you think about the sidearm lefties, I think of someone like a Bruce Hurst back in the day, or like Jesse Orosco felt like a side. This is lower than that. He's pitching from a lower angle. Than that.
It's not quite submarine, but it is. No. It is a low sidewinder. But Beef. This is why I can't comprehend why he gives up so many home runs. It's got to, I don't know why, but like he has his four seamer again is problematic. It doesn't have enough movement. It gets hit very hard. He's given up, I think, 1.5 home runs per 9 last year.
Last year was a tough year for him too because he was injured. He had the ligament issue that he had to get surgery on after the year.
He had the hand issue. But he's never really struck a lot of guys out.
No.
Now, what you're hoping for and what he predominantly throws is a sinker, right? So let's say we're talking about it earlier. They're going to play to his strengths. They're like, look, man, throw that four seamer every once in a while. All right, throw it to a guy throw it to Nick Madrigal. All right,
that's the keep him off balance pitch. You
can't be throwing it too much. Yeah, exactly. And focus on the sinker, and see what you could do with the sinker. Now, the three of these guys together, though, I think is what we need to talk about. If you think about former White Sox bullpens, right? Like you've kind of got a lot of the same type of things. They also were typically trying to get heavy sinker because you want to keep the ball on the ground. You had some guys that were fireballers, some guys that were not. That's about as different as you were getting. So if you were prepping to go play the White Sox, the bullpen was a whole lot of the same.
Right, yes.
If you're prepping to play the White Sox this year, you got to know each of these guys, even if they're not great, right? Even if Tim Hill has problems with home runs, even if Tim Hill is not striking people out, they have to prep for the sidewinder, and they might not see him at all. They might not see him at all, but they have to be ready for that. And that takes away from their time to be ready for other things. And so like that's another piece of like you got to try and keep them off balance. And honestly, if it was truly a health thing last year, if they do push him to throw the sinker more, which is more effective, and he can continue to be effective with that. The weird arm angle guys are always valuable. There's always a value to that guy. And you know it as Sox fans, you've watched, they got a good rally going or something, and then they're like, oh, they're bringing in this guy who, throws his knuckles dragging across the mound, and you're like, there's no way they're going to touch this. There's no way they're going to touch the ball. And they don't, right? Like, and
exactly.
And like I get it, we can feel like, oh man, it only happens to us, but it happens to other teams. And like so, I think it's nice to have a piece like this. It'll be interesting to see how they use him. Overusing Tim Hill will be problematic for this team. It will not like watching it in the.
What's overusing? Give me an overusing. Tell me what overusing is in your definition that you're really worried about here.
3-game series.
Yeah,
I want to see him like once. Maybe
just one time. Okay.
Right? Like if he's pitching damn near every day, like they do to some of these guys, because he's like a reliable guy, like no, it's gonna be bad. You got to use a guy like this a little more sparingly.
Makes sense. Yeah, he's a prodigious ground ball rate guy. So like when people were saying when he was first signed, like dime store Aaron Bummer, he really is. But you're right, Chorizy. His home run to fly ball rate is high and always has been high basically his entire career. He had one outlier year in 2022 where it wasn't. But generally, if you can lift the ball off of this guy, which is hard, if you can't lift it, you can knock it the hell out of the park. Because you're right, he has a bunch of mid fastballs that he's going to throw you. He has fastball and then other fastball. That's basically his whole thing, his MO. Right?
He's topping out around 90, right? Like most of his pitches are going to be like 88. Right. Yeah. So yeah, it's a risky venture.
So we got a bunch of different parts here. A guy that you highlighted you wanted to discuss in this is the White Sox Rule 5 pick, Shane Drohan. Tell us a little bit about him and how does he fit into this mix of we're going to accumulate all these guys who do different things here.
So this is an interesting guy. And if you looked at the Rule 5 draft and you were like excited, you're like, finally we're picking up some guy who is not at all related to the Royals. I have bad news for you. His father played for the Royals.
Oh, no.
So Bill played for the Royals. But
hell yes.
not a real connection, but
close enough.
But here's the thing. Shane Drohan, we picked him up in the Rule 5. He's been in the Red Sox minor leagues as a starter. He's really only been brought up as a starting pitcher. There's no way the White Sox are going to use him as that. And since he's a Rule 5 pick, he has to be on the roster or they got to send him back. Right? Like, so you start digging a little bit more into this guy. In AAA, I think it was between AA and AAA last year, 9.5 K per 9 as a starter. He throws mid-90s. Now, in the thing I was reading, it sounds like he could ratchet it up closer to 96, which maybe they'll have him do as a reliever, right? Like it kind of like think about Raylo, right? Where like Raylo moved from starting pitcher to the bullpen, and you're like,
yeah,
okay,
he had
now
a
he
couple
can
ticks.
Now he could throw a little bit harder. The rest of his pitch mix, he's a 4-pitch pitcher. He should not be. He's got a cutter that he cannot control. So that's something new too. I'm gonna guess they're just gonna go, don't do that. Pretty decent curveball that he throws. The curveball is like I said, mid 90s, like 93, 94. Fastball, 70s on the curveball.
Big drop. Yeah, big drop.
I'm wondering how much they'll use this though. The changeup seems to be the pitch, and the changeup sits kind of in the low 80s.
Allegedly a 60 grade changeup, Chorizy. That's what I'm getting from Fangraphs here. And when I looked at video of him, a lot of his strikeouts were coming on that changeup.
And here's why. The arm angle and the arm speed does not change between his fastball and his changeup. It comes out of his hand exactly like the fastball. And this is when we hear Brian Bannister talking about deception, this guy has a very deceptive changeup. And if they ratchet up his fastball a couple ticks because he's only pitching in relief, and the changeup can still be as effective as it's been, and you just use him as a 2-pitch pitcher, this could be an effective bullpen guy. And then that's what they're counting on. I'm not guaranteeing anything. I've never seen this guy pitch against major league players. Like, no one has. So
Your
who
mileage
knows
may
what
vary.
it'll look like. We're gonna get to see it in spring training, and the Sox are gonna get to decide if they send $100,000 back to the Red Sox and say, sorry, we wasted your time. But
Right.
there is an opportunity here for a guy to lessen the amount of pitches he's throwing, because some of them are not effective, and he's not going to be a starter, right? Like,
Right.
he's going to have to come to that. Like, I think that's part of it too. Like, I think they're going to have to give him the realization, like, you were not going to make it as a starter, and you're going to be a bullpen guy, but we think you could be a really good bullpen guy. And so I think that's the conversation. We'll see how he adapts to it. There's not a lot. I looked it up figuring that this guy was a bullpen guy already, right?
No.
And that's why they're just grabbing a bullpener. No, this is a starter. This guy was only starting.
I think they just liked some components of what he does, and it's like, all right, give me that guy. We'll take that guy. We'll figure out what we're gonna do with this guy. You know?
Yeah. So it's an interesting grab. But yeah, like the fact that it's a deceptive changeup, and that the changeup grades so well, everywhere that you read about him, like, that's the one thing that they point to. That's a plus pitch. And there's a lot of people that point to the curveball and say, like, that was supposed to be a plus pitch. It's not. And then some other people who are less nice are like, why are you throwing that cutter? And are you trying to throw a slider? What are you doing? So, like, I have a feeling that piece is just going to be chipped off right away. We'll see how they incorporate the curveball, if at all.
Interesting. And also, just to throw in, to finish this off discussion on Shane Drohan, is like, we talked about Tim Hill, and I'll show the graph again, where he throws at such a low slot there. Drohan comes almost over the top as you see lefties come. And when watching him in some videos, it's like, I'm surprised how much over the top he comes. A lot of times lefties, the natural swing of the lefty arm is more 3/4, and his is almost like a hammer toss, almost, how over the top it looks. So
I saw
it's interesting to be a little different in there, you know.
I saw a comment in the chat that says, if you don't know what to think, it's a sign that it's dog shit. Well,
Not necessarily.
It's not. It's being able to know exactly what's going to happen to a guy who's only pitched in the minors. Yeah, no one knows that. So, like, I can't say that I know what's going to happen to this dude.
Yeah, right. We're just laying out what we're aware of.
I'm just showing you what everybody that has watched him and dug into what he does, what they are seeing, and what they believe he can do. And it seems to be the changeup. The changeup seems to be special.
Yeah, absolutely. Quick comment here from Sir Thomas. He says, Beef, if the Sox trade cease during this live show, we would do the rest of the show tarps off. Absolutely. I have no faith they're going to do it, and I'd be happy to get my nipples out there for everyone to see whenever. So no big deal. Thank you, Sir Thomas.
I feel like if Jerry DiPoto knew that we were going to take our shirts off, he might make the trade just.
He'd fake it, and then just so we could be nude for a little bit. Yeah, there's no question about it. And then Schles Pappy, thank you for the super tip. Appreciate it. And he says, I really appreciate all your work, fellas. I have a hard time making it to live watch, but I listen to 100% of your content. Keep up the good work. Thanks, Schles Pappy. Appreciate you. And yeah, anytime you can listen. The live show is nice because you can converse with other White Sox fans who are in the comments, but anytime is great. So thank you. Appreciate you. I'm going to have a little sip of this Diet Pepsi because I don't have any booze on me.
I got white wine.
You got white wine to cover for me. I'm technically fasting right now, so try not to have any calories at this point, Chorizy. You know how fucking fat I am, so we got to.
No calories in white wine, so you'll be fine.
Allegedly. On Monday nights, there isn't, absolutely. So we talk about Shane Drohan. Is there anyone else in your mind, Chorizy, either in the minors, guys on the roster, non-roster invitees that are worth bringing up for this discussion here?
I think Davy Garcia is an interesting guy that came to the team late in the year last year. He's got a few nice things going for him, right? He throws a lot of different pitches because he's a converted starter. So I could see again here where they might narrow down his pitch selection. Like maybe just get rid of the cutter, focus on the sweeper a little bit more. Like I could see some of that. Good vertical movement, terrible horizontal movement, right? Like he's like there's a lot of pieces that you like about David Garcia, and then there's a lot of pieces that you're like, that's not a thing. That's not good. He's a guy though that I think they sought out and they were like, okay, this could be a nice pickup for us. And I don't know, he could be a guy that you see a lot during this season. They may be able to put a heavy workload on him, and you might see him, multiple times in a weekend or a bunch of times during a week. So like, I think that's going to be an interesting experiment to keep an eye on to see if the relief role really takes hold and he becomes a solid reliever. Like I'm not looking for him to be like a new closer or anything like that, right? I'm just looking for a guy who was a starting pitching prospect. You're moving him into a relief role. It's looked good so far. It's worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, right. Give a little more use there. Let me get to another drink here. Joey P, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. He says, thank yous for getting me hyped for this pitching stuff. I appreciate it. We that's what we've been drunkenly talking about this stuff, so we figured we are going to bring it to you guys, like all the different iterations that they're doing here. It's kind of interesting, to be honest.
I don't want to overhype it, right? Like I don't know that this team's like the pitching staff's going to be great. It's just that it's something new. They're trying something. I just appreciate that they're trying to do something unique, right? They're looking at this and they're going like, we don't want to spend a lot of money on this, but we want to prove the theory that you can put together a bullpen on the cheap of guys who are interesting all in their own rights, that have a few good things that they do, and we're going to take advantage of those good things and make sure that that's what they concentrate on. It doesn't sound like it should be a unique idea, but it is. It is when you see.
Or at least here it is. It's been here, right?
It's anywhere though. Like there's a few teams that do similar things. I mean, like Bannister's been part of one of them already, right? Like the Giants. The Giants did this too. But like you see the contracts that the back of the bullpen guys are getting, and even some of the guys that are not. Like I honestly watch a lot of baseball. I had to look up who the heck is Robert Stevenson when that guy like started getting attention coming into this offseason. I was like, why don't I know this name? Like it's like people are talking about getting him $30 million. Why don't I know this guy's name? And so it's one of those things where it's like, okay, people are still spending on bullpens. It wasn't just Rick Hahn doing this.
Right.
Teams all across the league do this.
That's right. And
if you don't have to, and if you're a team that doesn't spend like the White Sox, coming in and doing something like this is way more intriguing to me than Project Birmingham was, right? Like this is unique. This is a unique way of doing something. Project Birmingham was a nice like media story, but like this to me is actually where I'm looking at it and going like, okay, you are trying something different than what they've done before.
I love it. So now that we've talked about a variety of parts of what are looking like the White Sox bullpen in 2024, just from a commodity standpoint, Chorizy, the things that we've looked at, what are the White Sox missing? Because we were looking at this from the perspective of they're putting a bunch of odd parts together that are different from each other. And so what you're creating here is, the people emphasize the third times through penalty, right? And the third times through penalty is part pitcher fatigue, but it's also part, you're looking at the same repertoire a third time in a game, and yes, you get used to whatever it is that pitcher is throwing. The White Sox are putting together a puzzle here where you're never going to see this, maybe more than twice in a series in theory, right, out of any of these guys. And so what are they missing, though, out of this group?
So what they're missing, and I took a drink because I wrote a blog about this, but the one thing that they're missing, and I alluded to it earlier talking about Santos, they don't have another flamethrower. Like, even right now, Garrett Crochet doesn't project as that, right? Like he's going to throw 96 miles per hour, right? I mean, that's what you're going to assume, and it's possible that they're going to put him down in the minors to stretch him out and try and make him a starter.
And as we mentioned with Santos, his fastball is not his moneymaker. That's not where he gets his outs from.
Right.
It's the slider. So you don't have a fastball first guy out of this group right here.
So Ian brings up Alex Spies. Yeah, that's one guy.
That's one of them.
You can try and test out. There's another guy on the free agent market that I'm interested in that I don't think anyone else is interested in, and that's Shintaro Fujinami. And it's not good. Let's just be honest, it's not good. All right. So Fangraphs recently wrote an article about him, and it was he is. Pull up Nathan's comment here.
Thank you, Nathan. Go ahead, read that, Chorizy.
He says, Chorizy, Shintaro Fujinami, Thiago Vera. I love me some Thiago Vera. Yes, he's very much like Thiago Vera. And in the Fangraphs article, they called it the Fujinami conundrum. And it is the fact that he's very good at getting hitters to miss the ball when he throws it in the zone.
Okay.
However, he has trouble throwing it in the zone. And
Nathan's comment.
It gets worse the worse the count. So, like, if it's 2-0, if it's 1-0, it's probably not getting there. If it's 2-0, he's going to have a lot of trouble getting it in there. If it's 3-0, you're going to hit the Durham Bowl, right? Like this.
The batter's standing way out of the batter's box. Doesn't want to get hit.
But it's easy 100. It's easy 100. So I think that, like, you can go out and get a guy like that. You could go look at Spies. Or Spies. I forget how to say that guy's name. But, like, I think you need one of those guys in this bullpen. It's missing. In the fact that you're trying to have variance between all your different pitchers, you got too many 94-mile-per-hour guys in this bullpen. And it doesn't get better by having, like, Jimmy Lambert and Touki Toussaint in there. Now, Lambert helps if he features the knuckle curve a lot and and uses that. We'll see, and we'll see how healthy he stays doing that. But, like, you don't have a guy to come in after Tim Hill. When Tim Hill's been throwing 88 mile per hour sinkers, you don't have a guy to come in right after that and go, I'm going to throw 102 miles per hour now.
Right.
Like, and actually take advantage of, like, the weirdness of Tim Hill, right? Like, you go from that guy throwing 88 to a guy throwing 100 miles per hour. That's a very big difference, right? Like, so
I figured you were going to come in here and say this exactly with the fastball. And I had in my notes here, and I think Ian brought him up in the comment, Jordan Leisure. Jordan Leisure has been a darling of Sox Twitter as far as, like, a minor league arm. That's a 70 fastball, Chorizy, and that's where he gets his outs from. It's movement on the fastball, and it's like, this is a one-pitch pitcher, and this is a guy who, you're exactly right. When you have these goofballs in there, you throw him in there. And is he a back-end guy yet? No, because the secondaries haven't really developed yet enough. But he'd be good enough for this kind of role where it's like, all right, we got a lot of guys throwing balls. Here you go. Come and throw this speed ball here.
But, so Leisure is in my mind, I would assume they're going to take the same approach they're taking with guys like Montgomery and Ramos, where they're not rushing them to the majors. They're going to put they're going to grab someone off the free agent market and jam them in there to do the same thing, probably less effectively, knowing that this is not a year that we're going to try and win.
They're not going to do it with a free agent. I'll tell you who they're going to do it with.
Who are they going to do it with?
They've been piling up starting pitchers for some goddamn reason, Chorizy. And you know whose fastball is a real moneymaker when he can throw it for only one inning at a time? Michael Kopech.
Yeah.
Michael Kopech is the guy who, this is his role, basically. They ain't saying it. They're saying, we're going to give you a shot as a starter. But we brought these 12 other starters in just in case the starter thing doesn't work out for you. When I was listening to Bannister in that podcast, and then you and I started going through this, I'm like, son of a bitch, they know already that they want Kopech in the bullpen. And they're like, you're going to fit even better now with all these other goofs out here. You're just going to slide him in there, and he's going to be unstoppable.
Beef, for me, though, it's like you're in the car in a bad relationship, and you're just like, I don't want to believe that this is happening.
Yeah, exactly, right? That's kind of what the approach there.
I'm just going to look straight ahead and drive. This isn't happening over here, and Michael Kopech's going to be just fine. Like that's kind of like
that's how I want to believe, because I'm a 100% a you start Kopech. That's his highest upside ever. But the more I'm looking at all this stuff, I'm like, what are they trying to set? They're trying to set up a little nice, cozy little nest for you, Michael, as something else. No, when I was looking at this, Chorizy, I came to a different conclusion. I was thinking the White Sox here, they need a curveball first guy, a curveball primary guy. And so I looked to see, like, who actually does throw curveballs anymore. And there's not a lot of people when you come in here that are like, threw at least 40 innings in relief last year, and they throw a fair amount of curveballs. That's your list right there. And now on the White Sox roster, you see a Tanner Banks at number 23. Banks is in the mix for stuff here. I kind of wonder about them emphasizing his curveball, having him throw a curveball a little more, just to have him be not the same as any of the other guys that they're throwing out there.
So I didn't bring up curveball because I think I mentioned Lambert earlier that I think they'll make him throw the curveball, the knuckle curve more because it's just his best pitch. But Touki Toussaint throws an even distribution of his pitches, and the curveball is the one he probably throws the most. And like out of the very close distribution, I could see them going like Touki, just curveball and sinker out of the pen, like just curveball and sinker out of the pen, and see if they can get that there. However, you're putting Touki back into the rotation because you're putting Kopech in. So
my man.
So maybe you do need a curveball guy.
No, the last little segment we had here was picking your free agent off there. Fujinama your guy, or do you have anyone else out there that you like that you would put on this roster, Chorizy? Well, I sitting there in the free agency, like.
I think Fujinami's a good guy to get that special thing in there. There's a guy I was looking at in I'm gonna mess up her name. I think it's Selena who writes for
Southside
Sox.
Yeah.
She mentioned this guy too, because I was looking up different relievers, and Jay Jackson is out there, and like this is a guy who's like not familiar. He's barely pitched in the majors, but he's not young. And he's always been good. Like it's a weird thing. It's like this guy's like he's been up like 6 times. He's always been effective. We don't want him. Like,
get lost.
I don't like. Maybe he's an asshole. I don't know. But it was one of those things where I was like looking through people and I was like, someone should pick this guy up. This guy seems good, and like and it would be relatively cheap, right? Like you look at some of these other guys that are out there where you got like 8 teams attached to him, right? And you're like, why is he going to go like, yes, I would love to go to the Sox, right?
Right.
Brian just mentioned Ryan Stanek in there, and like, there's like 9 teams attached to that guy. Like everybody's got their eyes on him, and it's like we're in the Jay Jackson, Shintaro Fujinami business over here. Let's just be honest with ourselves. So like that's kind of what you're looking at. But I looked at Jay Jackson and I was like, I don't know much about this guy, but it seems like it's always good. It seems like it's just a solid reliever. Why is no one picking this guy up? If it's gonna be like league minimum, why the hell not?
Yeah, let's give it a shot. Our guy Ken W.O. says, Brian Shaw, put Brian Shaw. He goes, he's pitching 6 days a week. What are we doing here? I love Brian Shaw just for the durability. Like if they went back and said Brian Shaw come back here, 1 year, 1.5 million, I'd be thrilled, even if he stinks, because you can always just plug him in there no matter what. Chorizy, I was still thinking along the curveball line, and maybe this guy's a little too sought after because he actually is a real reliever. But Phil Matone, who was on the Astros last year, he's number 5 on my curveball usage list, and his stuff rating is super high, 131 for a curveball. Let's get just a curveball guy in here. I feel like the curveball is so out of favor at this point. It's trending towards the knuckleball in a way. Like people don't throw the curveball anymore. Everyone's hard slider everywhere.
I've seen a few names attached to Matone over like the course of the offseason, but not much. And it's
right.
That's a guy I think. Yeah, I don't think he'll be expensive. Like that's a guy you could get.
Yeah,
definitely not in the flamethrower category.
No, not at all. Not at all. Well, we got a couple of them at home. We're gonna work out which one actually ends up in there. So, Chorizy, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge on the White Sox newfangled bullpen, along with what ingredients we might still need here. Remember, we ain't trying to be right on the show. We're just trying to understand. Do you have anything you want to plug or talk about or pontificate about before you go?
Oh, I got tons of stuff to plug, man. So obviously, come out to the Ramova show on March 27th. Get your tickets right now. There's a link in the description of the video. I'm going to be on the It's Getting Drafty podcast tomorrow night, doing some Star Wars stuff.
Oh shit!
And then this year, me and Josh will be back with the Star Wars stuff. There's possibly 2 live action shows coming out this year. We'll see. Nice. We'll see how that all schedules out. I'm hoping to get one of those as a trailer in the Super Bowl. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, we'll be back with that. And of course, every Thursday night you can catch me live with Beef on the From the 108 podcast. I think that's it. I'm probably forgetting something.
You probably are, but whatever. We'll plug it on Thursday, whatever you're missing right now. Chorizo, thanks for coming on. I'll talk to you later, bro. That was Chorizy. That was Chorizy on. All right. Next week's guest. We don't have next week's guest planned just yet, but in 2 weeks, I'm going to have Alex Root on here. And he has some interesting ideas about the White Sox and the direction they're going in. And really, you haven't heard his thoughts on Chris Getz at this point and the way they're putting the roster together. So I think that's going to be a thrill for everyone. That will be on the 12th. February 5th, I'm still working on a guest. We'll get someone in here. Thanks again to all you, the 108 family that's up in the YouTube comments. Thanks to Punky's Pizza and Pasta as the new sponsor of this show. Appreciate all you smashing the like button, comments, and of course the drinks and tips. I love all of you, and we'll see you on Thursday.